Okay, cool. So let's get started. So just come find any comfortable seated position. So whatever works for you. I'm gonna sit up on a blankie. Hey, everybody just joining us. Hey, Karen. Nice to see you. Hi. We're just getting going, so perfect timing. So just come find any comfortable seat of your choice. Cross-legged, on blocks. You can sit on your knees. You can sit on one of those awesome bolsters, whatever works for you. And then hands wherever's comfortable, maybe on the knees. And just take a few moments to kind of get out anything that's left over from your day, or maybe you're starting, because I know some of you are on the other side of the world. So anything that's left over from getting out of bed, maybe. Just fidgeting, moving the hair, anything that needs to happen before you can kind of settle into the present moment. And then you can allow the eyes to gently close and start to turn the attention inwards and start to bring your attention to the time on the mat today. So you may have seen that when you booked this class, I had said that this was yin for hips. And hips are such a cool part of the body. The anatomy of the hip is absolutely amazing. It's one of the most important joints in the body. It's the biggest joint in the body. And it's also the joint that allows us to walk, to run, to be upright, to be humans as we know humans are today. And on a physiological level, the muscles of the hips actually have a relationship with the fight or flight response system. So that's the stress response system when we want to run away from a situation or we want to freeze in a situation. So we're actually born with this reflex of hip flexion, which is tucking our knees into our chest whenever we get challenged or whenever we get into a situation where we're threatened or scared. So this is our natural reaction. So what can happen over time is if we're in stressed situations or stressful lives for extended periods of time, we can actually shorten the muscles in the front of the hips here, and it leads to a bad posture. One of the hip flexors, one of these muscles at the front here, the psoas, you guys have probably heard of the psoas, it's actually connected, its fibers are connected to the bottom of the diaphragm. So if that hip flexor is tight, it can pull on the diaphragm, and then it means our breath can be hindered, our breath can be changed, simply because we're in very stressful situations all of the time. On a more psychological level, and this is what we're going to be working with today, we're going to be working with the physical as well, but on a psychological level, the way we approach these deep hip poses is so reflective of the way we approach different situations within our lives. And it's a mirror for how we approach challenges, because a lot of these poses are going to be very challenging for us. And so I'm sure many of you have been in yoga classes and the teacher puts you in double pigeon or in some funky hip pose, and immediately your brain is like, oh, heck no, get me out of here. I don't want to be in this position. It's not comfy. My hips are screaming at me. I want out. And maybe you've had that experience in your life off the mat too. There's situations that immediately trigger this stress response in you that you need to escape that situation. So hip openers, along with these situations off the mat, they can require that we be a little bit more soft. They require patience. And that's what we're going to be working with this evening, is this idea of patience and staying present with the breath through uncomfortable situations. And there's a beautiful passage in the Tao Te Ching, which is a book that was written by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. And he writes, do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water becomes clear? So essentially he's asking us, do we have the patience to wait in these situations where we're uncomfortable, where we don't know what the outcome is going to be, where things aren't clear? Do we have the patience to sit in that discomfort, to sit in that uncomfortableness and wait to see what is on the other side when our water's clear? So that's what we're going to be working with this evening. Can you sit with the discomfort And hopefully it's pleasurable discomfort. Of course, if you're ever in pain, I want you to back out of these poses. But if it's pleasurable discomfort, it's okay discomfort, can you sit there in that place of uncomfortableness and surround yourself with patience? So we're going to get started tonight, actually staying seated. We're just going to do a very quick pranayama practice just to center ourselves, bring us back to the present moment. So if you need to switch the crossing of your legs before we begin, go ahead and do that. Then bring one hand to the heart, the other hand on top. And just take a couple of breaths, noticing your inhales and your exhales. And here, do you have the patience to listen to your breath? Is your mind racing to take you somewhere else? Is your mud a little bit cloudy? Can you sit with that? And we're going to take a short pranayama together called Samavritti, which is essentially a balancing breath. So we will inhale all together for a count of 4, a short pause at the top, and then exhale together for a count of 4. And we'll continue in that pattern for a few breaths together. So you can just follow along to the sound of my voice. So everybody take their final breath on their own. So a deep inhale and a deep exhale. And then we begin. So we inhale, 2, 3, 4, slight pause. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, slight pause. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, slight pause. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, slight pause. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, pause. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, pause. And keep that going, following your own pace, your own rhythm, your own breath. If you feel like you need to add on an extra count and make it 5 or 6, then please feel free. Make it your own practice. And then take 3 more full rounds. So 3 full inhales, 3 full exhales. No rush to finish. And when you have finished, just release the hands down to the legs. And then notice any sensations that may have arisen, any changes that may have happened in the body, mind, spirit through that practice. So we'll start our physical practice now today. Yin is the practice of patience. So where in your practice today can you find that little bit of extra patience, especially in these deep hip poses? So as you feel ready, we'll make our way onto all fours. So if you're sat on a blanket, you can open it up and maybe put your knees on it. We are going to be on our back knee for a little while. So if you know that you have a little bit of discomfort in that back knee, just stick a blanket underneath it and grab a couple of blocks if you like to use blocks. We're making our way into a pose called dragon pose. So all fours, You have hips over knees, shoulders over wrists. And then take your right hand and walk it in towards the center of the mat a little bit. And then step right hand, right foot even. Step the right foot to the outside of the right hand. The right hand, right foot are next to each other. So this is dragon pose right here. And take a few breaths to kind of wiggle around. You know, in yin, we always end up in our stillness in our poses, holding the poses. But as we enter them, it's always good to wiggle around a little bit and find what your edge is for today. So that edge is the place that you first feel resistance. And if it's not comfortable for you to be on hands, you can have blocks under hands. Be a little bit more upright. And if you want to take it a little bit further, you can bring the blocks maybe a level down and then come to your forearms on blocks or forearms all the way down on the mat. You figure out what works for you today. And then start sending your inhales into that front hip. So come to a place of stillness. Maybe close the eyes. With every inhale, visualize that breath moving deep, deep into that right hip joint. So where the femur meets the pelvis on the right-hand side. So we have 6 different directions pretty much that our hips can move in. And right now we have a couple of them going on. We have hip flexion in our front hip, which is basically the knee coming in towards the torso or the torso coming in towards the knee. And that's hip flexion. We have some degree of hip extension in the back hip, the hip moving behind or the leg moving behind us. And then we have something called adduction, adduction, which is when the legs come towards each other. So it's something like eagle pose or cow face pose. We have abduction, abduction, which is what's going on in that front leg to a very small degree. This is when our legs move away from each other. And then we have the 2 directions of rotation. So we have internal rotation, spinning the knee in towards the midline, external rotation, spinning the knee out from the midline, which is what we're going to move into next. So you're quite welcome to stay exactly where you are. If you want to explore a little bit of external rotation on that right hip, I'm just going to turn so you guys can see me. You can come onto the little toe edge of your right foot and start winging the right knee out to the right. So you want to keep foot and leg in line. We're not just bending at the foot and letting the knee stay upright. Take the knee with you. So we're coming into winged dragon. If you go down there and it doesn't check out for you, feel free to come right back up. And again, you can be up on your hands, you can be up on blocks, down on forearms, forearms on blocks, whatever works for your dragon today. And if you find in these poses that it's quite challenging to be patient, it's quite challenging to be quiet, can you turn your attention to your breath and simply let your mind focus on the pattern of inhales and exhales, giving yourself something to focus on. It's a form of meditation to simply focus on the sound of our own breath. And as we spend some time here in Winged Dragon, you may find that your edge changes, or it may recede, or it may get a little deeper. So never be afraid of either coming out of the pose a little bit or going a little deeper into the pose. Always listen to your body, especially with these deep hip poses. Be here for about another 30 seconds or so. So keep sending those deep inhale breaths into that front hip. Remember that psoas muscle is connected to our diaphragm. So the way we breathe affects the tightness of our hip muscles, limits our flexibility within our hips. So we want deep breaths sent down in there. Open up those hip muscles. So if you have the right knee out to the side, slowly begin to bring it back up. Turn the sole of the right foot to the mat. And then if you're down on your forearms or down on blocks, just come on back up so everybody meets in regular dragon. If you have blocks, just shift them to the front for a second while we switch sides. And take a breath or two at the top here before we do so. With your next exhale, shift your weight back a little bit so the bum comes back over the back knee, just so that you can step the right knee to meet the left. And we meet in tabletop. And then pause here for a couple of breaths. And see if you can feel any difference between the right side and the left side. Has your mud settled a little bit on the right side compared to the left? Is the water a little bit clearer? And then we'll make our way to the other side. So the left hand walks in towards the center of the mat. Step left foot to the outside of the left hand. And then we take a few breaths to settle in, wiggle around, see how the hips are doing on this side of the body. And that psoas muscle actually connects to our lumbar vertebrae, which is the lowest part of our back, right before the sacrum. And it means essentially that our psoas can be tight on one side and loose on the other. So it can pull us to one side or another. And so it may be that your hip on this side feels very different to the first side. And start to come to a place of stillness. And then figure out your version of dragon again. So up on fingertips, on blocks, forearms down, forearms on blocks. And we'll start in regular dragon. So sole of the left foot on the mat, left knee pointing up towards the ceiling. And start sending your breaths into that left hip. And again, you have the option to stay exactly where you are. If you want to start taking it a little bit into the outside of the left thigh, into the glutes, into the something called the tensor fascia latae, which is a hip flexor on the left, on the outside of the thigh. And start winging the left knee out to the left. So you're rolling onto the pinky toe edge of the left foot. And then again, find your variation with the arms. So upright, down on forearms, on blocks, whatever works. You're in these poses, things may arise for you. Can you sit with whatever it is that comes up? Again, if it's pain or if anything's ever horrendously uncomfortable, please come on out. But if it's simply your brain telling you that, hey, this pose is a little bit uncomfortable, I want to get out of here, can you just sit with that? Can you just listen, not judge? And can you sit and wait and see what happens if you have the patience to sit in that discomfort? You got about 3 more deep breaths here. Sending those inhales deep into that hip joint. And as you feel ready, start lifting that left knee back up, moving very slowly. We're asking a lot of our hips right now. Sole of the left foot returns to be flat on the mat. If you were down on forearms or on blocks, just come back to the regular dragon. And gently shift the hips back to the point that you can step the left knee to meet the right, and we meet again in tabletop. Here in tabletop, close the eyes. And just relax, take any form of tabletop that works for you. It doesn't matter if you're in the perfect vinyasa alignment of tabletop. We're just pausing here to notice how our hips feel. And then pay attention to how you responded to those poses. We started off with a pretty big hip opening pose, dragon, winged dragon. How did you respond? Was your initial reaction to panic and want to get out? Were you able to breathe through that with patience and sit and wait until the water runs clear? And your next exhale, come to sit down on the mat. I'm just going to spin around so you guys can see me. And you can sit up on a blanket if you'd like, just a little blanket under your sit bones. Take both legs out long to begin with. We're coming into Ardha Matsyendrasana, half Lord of the Fishies, essentially. And I'm going to show you 3 different variations so you guys can pick the one that works for you today. Option number 1 is just to bend the right knee. Place the sole of the right foot on the inside of the left thigh. And then we'll do a twist. Everybody's going to twist. So I'll just show you all the leg variations at once, and then you can pick the one that suits you. So this is option number 1. Option number 2, exactly the same thing, except sole of the right foot hits the floor on the outside of the left thigh. And then option number 3, swing that left foot around by your right bum cheek. All 3 are great. They're all just going to work different areas of the hips. You find the one that works for you today. When you found the leg variation that works for you, left hand is going to grab right knee, and it's yin. We don't want to pull. We're not yanking it. We're just holding that knee upright. Right hand behind you on the floor for support. Sit up tall. Lengthen crown of the head towards the ceiling. Think long, 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 tall, tall, tall with the spine. And then onto your next exhale, gentle twist to the right. You can kind of use that left hand just to grab onto the knee very gently and hold yourself turning around towards the right. And maybe you follow the twist with the neck so that you gaze out over the right shoulder. Beautiful, guys. So here, whichever variation of this pose you're in, your right knee, the one that's pointing up towards the ceiling, we have that in adduction, adduction. So the leg is drawing in towards the midline. And it's in strong hip flexion too. So the thigh is moving in towards the torso. So we're working our adductors, our hip flexors, but we're also allowing the back of the body to release, to stretch. And if at any point with the neck turned, it gets uncomfortable, feel free to turn the neck back so it's facing the same direction as your torso. Got a couple more deep breaths here. With every inhale, can you sit up a little taller? And giving yourself space to breathe. The more we can sit up tall, the more room we have to breathe in our twists. Very slowly unwind the head first. So bring the neck back so that the head faces in the same direction as the torso. Then start to unwind the torso, bring that back to center. And then release the legs. So we all meet in a relaxed version of Dandasana staff pose. And again, take a quick check-in between left side, right side. How are the legs feeling? How are the hips feeling, especially on the inner groin? And then we'll make our way into Ardha Matsyendrasana on the other side. So again, yogi's choice, either sole of the left foot on the inside of the right thigh with the knee pointing up towards the ceiling, or we cross that foot over. So the sole of the foot is on the outside of the right thigh. And then final option is to swing that right foot down by the left hip. Whichever variation you're taking, we'll all do the twist together. So right hand this time on the outside of the left knee, left hand out behind you for support. And our inhale takes us up tall. And with our next exhale, gentle twist to the left. And maybe we take our gaze over the left shoulder. Again, know that our hips might not be the same on each side. So this side may feel very different to the previous side. So I was asking you guys to find patience in these poses, but where in your life off the mat could you use a little bit more patience? What situations are there in your life right now where your gut reaction is to barrel your way through and get out of the situation as quickly as possible? And in some situations, that is completely and utterly justified. If it's dangerous, if you're in trouble of being hurt, that's absolutely the right situation to get yourself out of quickly. But if we're talking about situations where it's simply that you're impatient to get something over and done with, what could you do in those situations to allow yourself to stay present in the moment and to wait for that mud to settle. Because maybe on the other side of that mud settling is a much better outcome than if you had just barreled your way through with impatience in the beginning. And a couple more deep breaths on this side. And as we did last time, unwind the neck first. So gaze comes to face the same direction as the chest. And slowly unwind the chest and the arms. And then extricate the legs. Unhook the legs. Take the legs out in front of you and maybe give everything a little wiggle. If you want to release the hip flexors a little bit, you can put hands behind you and lean back a little. Just release some of that degree of hip flexion. And then we're going to make our way into our next seated pose, which is shoelace or Gomukhasana. And again, we have a couple of variations. So I'll show you the leg variations first. You guys can pick your own adventure. First option is going to be keeping the left leg straight out in front of you. Bend the right knee and then cross the right leg over the top of the left so that my knees are going to be pretty much stacked. Right foot is going to come somewhere in the vicinity of the left bum cheek. It doesn't have to come really close. It can be further up. If you get to this point and this top knee is way up here, absolutely fine, no problem whatsoever. Just grab a handy dandy block and put it in between the knees or a bolster, a blanket, whatever. This is going to be option number one. Option number two, if you get to this point and it's pretty comfortable, you can swing the left foot and that's going to come on the outside of the right hip. So you're going to end up in this crisscross position with our knees pretty much stacked. And here again, if that top knee is floating, put a block or a bolster or a blanket in between them. If on both of these variations, it's a bit uncomfortable to be sat like this, experiment with putting a block under your sit bones or a bolster under your sit bones, just lifting the sit bones up a little bit. So find your variation. I'm going to be here for a minute or so, so make sure you're comfortable. Again, you can have feet close in towards the bum or feet further out, whatever works for you. And just for the first few breaths, have hands on the top knee. Close your eyes. And notice what comes up for you. Is your immediate reaction to try and get out of this one? This is one of those deep poses that people tend to love or hate. Is your gut reaction to try and bail, get this pose over and done with as quickly as possible? And if it is, can you sit here? Can you acknowledge that you're uncomfortable? And can you wait to see what happens? And as much as we're uncomfortable in these poses, we want to try and relax. It's a bit of an oxymoron, right? But our connective tissue relaxes best when we're relaxed. If we tense up in these poses because they're uncomfortable, we're not giving our connective tissue the time it needs to release a little bit. So that's why deep breathing is important. Bringing your awareness to your breath, giving your mind something to focus on other than the discomfort. If you're totally happy where you are, then stay exactly where you are. There's no need to go anywhere else. If you'd like to take it a little bit further into the hip flexors, so those muscles on the front of the hips, you can start to walk yourself forward. I'm going to get limited here by my big old belly. But you can start to bring your chest down towards your top thigh. And you can always make a little block pillow for your forehead in front of you. Or maybe you can come down and make a little nest with your hands. Beautiful, Diana, that's it. Again, if that doesn't work for you, staying upright is a beautiful option. So here we have that adduction, the adduction of the hips. Again, we're bringing our two femur bones, those two thigh bones in towards each other. And then we have strong external rotation. We're spinning our knees out to the sides. So you may feel sensations in the inner groin. You may feel sensations on the outer hips, front of the hips, back of the hips, pretty much everywhere. Can you be with those sensations? And have the patience to wait and see where they take you. Okay, 3 more deep breaths. Really send that breath down, especially into the top hip. So the right hip. Send your inhales down there. Visualize every time you inhale and your diaphragm moves. Those hip muscles, that psoas muscle is moving with the diaphragm. So deep breaths, healthy breathing. You'll eventually equate to healthy psoas. If you are tipped forward, slowly start lifting your torso back up. No need to rush anywhere. Whichever leg variation you're in, take your hands behind you and lean back. Lean back to the point that your knees start to lift up off the floor, and then unravel your legs. Take both legs out in front of you, maybe with a bit of a grunt and a groan, and give everything a shake and a wiggle. And just for a few breaths, again, notice the difference, left versus right. What are the sensations in each side of the body? So as you feel ready, we'll make our way into the other side. And this is when you thank the universe or whoever, whichever deity it is you believe in, that you only have 2 legs. So we only have to do this on 2 sides. So this time, right leg stays out long, left leg bends, bring the left foot by the right hip, left knee stacks roughly on top of the right knee. Block in between the knees, blanket, bolster, whatever you need. Option 1 is to stay right here. Option 2, if it works for you, swing that right foot round by the left bum cheek. And take a few breaths to kind of wriggle in, get settled in this shoelace pose. And again, you can be sat up on a block or a bolster. And put your hands on your front knee just for the first few breaths. And where do you feel this pose on this side? Is this side any different to the first? Are you able to sit here a little bit longer because you know this is side number 2 and we'll be done with this pose soon? Or does that just make you more impatient? And where does that show up for you off the mat? If you know something will be over soon, are you even more impatient to get it done? And where in our lives are we missing out on things because we're so impatient to have things finished with? We're rushing our way through them. What moments are we missing out on? Again, you have the option to stay right here, perfect place to stay. Or you can start to tilt the torso forward, chest coming down towards that top leg. Maybe you make the little pillow with your blocks. Maybe you make a support with your hands. You've got 3 more full breaths here. Again, send those inhales down into that top hip. Deep breaths into the hip muscles. There's over 20 muscles that control the motion at the hip. And there's loads of teeny tiny ones. There's some big ones. So we really want to send them as much oxygen, as much love as we can in these poses. And if your torso is tilted down, you can start gently bringing the torso back up. Everybody lean back on the hands. Lean back to the point that the knees start to lift off the mat. And then unravel the legs. Oh, give everything a little wiggle, a little shake. Oh, and see how that feels. You guys are doing amazing. We have one more seated pose and before we head down to lay on the mat. So come to sit in kind of like a seated malasana. So soles of the feet on the floor, legs are kind of wide. So hips are abducted, abducted, knees moving away from the midline. And then we're going to take our knees into opposite rotation. So essentially drop the inside of your left knee to the mat, the outside of your right knee to the mat. Left bum is probably going to lift up off the mat. That's fine. And then take it over to the other side. So inside of the right knee, outside of the left knee. And just do that a couple of times. We're just bringing some motion back into the hips. You can use your hands behind you to support you like I'm doing. Feet are probably going to wiggle around a bit. That's okay. Next time, your right knee is towards the right. So the outside of the right knee is on the mat. The inside of the left knee is on the mat. Let them stay there. And again, if your left butt cheek lifts off the mat, it's okay. Just wiggle now a little bit so that your left thigh bone points more or less straight out from your body. And then the left shin is at a 90-degree angle to that. And then just tuck the right foot somewhere near the front of the left knee. Your right thigh is going to point off to the right at a diagonal. So we're in something called deer pose. Doesn't have to be exact, but you'll notice we have huge internal rotation on this left thigh, external rotation on our right. Now, take your right hand out behind you for your support, sit up tall, and we're going to come back into our twist. So left hand to the top of the right knee. Inhale lifts you up, and then exhale, start twisting gently to the right. Once you get to the end of your twist, so the place you can still comfortably breathe, we can still maintain the pose, then take your gaze in the opposite direction. So your entire torso is twisting to the right, your gaze, your cervical spine is twisting to the left. You end up looking over your left shoulder. And if you get lost at all, just look up at the camera and see what I'm doing. So you're essentially looking back at your back foot but your body is twisting towards your front knee. Yes, beautiful, guys. So in our yoga practice, we don't do many poses with internal rotation of our femur bones. Yoga is very external rotation heavy. So it's nice to spend a little bit of time in some of these poses where we have that internal rotation of the thighs. I think we have about 3 poses where we internally rotate our femurs, and this is one of them. And then we're about to do the other one. Unwind the head. So the head comes to look in the same direction as the torso. Then begin to unwind the twist. Torso comes back to center. And then all we're going to do is lift the legs up and flip them over to the other side. So now the outside of the left knee comes to the mat, the inside of the right knee. And then again, see if you can get the right thigh bone pointing straight out from you, and then the shin at 90 degrees to the thigh bone. And the sole of the left foot somewhere in front of the right knee. Left hand out behind you. Inhale, we sit up tall. And exhale, right hand to the outside or the top of the left knee. And we start to do a gentle, gentle twist. And come to that place where you first feel resistance. So no forcing ourselves into a deep twist here. And then turn just the neck. So turn the cervical spine to gaze over the right shoulder, gazing towards the back foot. Beautiful, guys. This is a little bit of a 2 for 1. So we're getting a lot of work done in the hips. We're also getting some work done in the deep muscles of the neck by rotating our neck into this position. And then unwind the neck first. Gaze comes back to face the same direction as the chest. Then unwind the torso. And hands out behind you. And then you can just, again, windshield wiper the legs from side to side. So the same motion we did before we went into that pose. Just releasing anything that's kind of stagnated while we were sat there. And then we're going to make our way down onto our backs. Grab your blocks and put them off to one side or the other. Just have them within arm's reach. So no rush to get down there, but head to lay flat on your back. Beautiful. And then I mentioned we're going to go into pose number 2 of 3 that does internal rotation of the thighs. So we're essentially coming into a supine twist with eagle leg variation, Garudasana leg variation. So come lay flat on the back, bend the knees so the knees point up towards the ceiling, soles of the foot on the floor. Heels are somewhere close to the fingertips. So you should more or less be able to brush the back of the heels with your fingertips. Lift the right leg off the mat and cross right leg over left like you're being fancy and sitting in a posh chair. Option to stay right here, or option to hook the right foot behind the back of the left leg. If that doesn't happen, no worries, you're still getting the same benefits from the pose. Take your arms out at shoulder height, T shape, palms face up, palms face down. I'll leave that up to you. Push into your foot that's on the mat, lift the hips up slightly so that you can move them a couple of inches to the right, lower the hips back down, and then allow both knees to fall towards the left. So we're in a supine twist, twisting to the left. And if eagle legs totally don't check out for you whatsoever, just have one knee stacked on top of the other or any other variation of a supine twist that works for you. Yep, and if you need to, you can have blocks under the knees. And maybe take the gaze out over the right shoulder if that checks out. If you get any tingling in your shoulders or in your neck or in your arms from having the arms out at T shape, at shoulder height, you can just bring the arms down by the sides, maybe one hand on the heart, the other hand on top. We have a lot of nerves that pass through the shoulder joint, and sometimes they can get compressed when we have our arms either at shoulder height or above shoulder height. So just be aware if you ever feel any tingling sensations, it's probably just a nerve being compressed slightly. So this might be a slightly different variation to the reclined twist that you're used to. So again, pay attention. What's your body's natural reaction to these poses? Is it like, oh, get me out of here, I want to do the pose I know? Are you able to sit with that? You're able to sit and wait for that to pass and see what is on the other side of it. You've got 3 more deep breaths on this side of the twist. So as we've been doing all class, allow the gaze to come back to the center first. And then gently bring the knees back up to center. No rush. We have time to let our mud settle. Uncross the legs. And just take a breath or two at the top. Noticing any difference between the left and right side. And then we move to our other side. So pick up the left foot, across the left leg over right, like you're sitting in a fancy chair. Option to let that foot just hang out or tuck it behind the back of the right shin. Push into whatever foot is on the floor, lift the hips up, scoot them a couple of inches to the left, and then pop them back down on the mat. Your next exhale, the knees fall towards the right. Find the arm variation that works for you, and then maybe gaze goes out towards the left. Blocks under those knees are always your friend if the knees are floating. So the first step in mastering patience is becoming aware of our impatience and admitting to our impatience. So we have to acknowledge things that make us impatient. So whether it's poses or whether it's situations in life, we need to acknowledge when we're frustrated and we begin to get irritated and impatient in those situations. And we can do things like ask ourselves, what is it about this pose? What is it about this situation in life that is causing me to be impatient? Why do I want to get out of this? Is it simply because I'm uncomfortable? is there some element of danger that, yes, I should get out of this situation right now? Or is it simply that, hey, this doesn't feel super comfortable, I want to get out? And what might happen if we allowed our impatience to exist, but not react to it? What might happen if we have the patience to sit with the impatience and allow the mud to clear? What is waiting for us on the other side when the mud settles? So bring the gaze back up to center. Gently start bringing the knees back up to center. Unraveling the leg situation. And then we're going to make our way into Shavasana. So if there's any movements you want to take before we head to Shavasana, then please feel free. Otherwise, if there's any props you want to grab, a blanket, eye pillow, cushion, bolster, anything you want to make Shavasana the most comfortable place you can be, then please feel free to grab it. And then we'll all meet laying down on our backs. And here, allow the feet to wing out to the side. So we're not trying to control anything muscularly here. Gently tuck the shoulder blades beneath you. So you're just opening up through the collarbones. And with every inhale, visualize that breath moving into the pelvis, into those hip muscles that we've worked this evening. And we'll take 2 falling out breaths together. So take a deep inhale through the nose and exhale, sigh it out the mouth. We'll take 1 more like that. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, sigh it out. And then relax into Shavasana. slowly begin to deepen the breath, making your inhales and exhales a little longer and a little deeper. And start wiggling the fingers and toes, inviting some movement back into the physical body. Start making the movements a little bit bigger, circling the wrists and the ankles. If you're feeling pretty good in Shavasana and you just want to hang out there, that is absolutely fine. Otherwise, you can take the arms overhead, take a full body stretch, really stretch in both directions. And then bring the knees into the chest, teddy bear hug, telling yourself how grateful you are to yourself for showing up, for being patient. When you're ready, roll over to your right side and just pause there for a few breaths. And you can slowly make your way up to sit. No rush. Take your time to get back up. And again, feel free to hang out in Shavasana for longer if you want to. If you're coming out with me, then come find any comfortable seat of your choice. And we'll finish how we started. So sitting up tall, allow the eyes to close, hands can rest wherever is comfortable. And then bring the awareness back to the hips. So how do the hips feel? How does the pelvis feel? How do all the muscles surrounding that area of the body feel? So we worked a lot with the idea of patience in these hip opening poses, which can be very challenging for a lot of us. And as you move from your mat today, can you take that idea of patience with you? So can you find any moments of impatience that may arise in your life off the mat and observe them without judgment? Can you find the patience to live through the impatience? Can you allow yourself the time to observe these things as they arise and then go beyond any limitation that it's presenting? Do you have the patience to wait until the mud has settled and the water becomes clear? Bring the hands together in prayer at the chest. And take the knuckles of the thumbs to the third eye, the center of the forehead. So with grace and gratitude and patience, that the light in me honors and bows to the light within each and every one of you. Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste. Thank you all so much for practicing with me today. I hope you liked the class. I hope to see you again on the mat next week. And next week, actually, you guys, those of you who are signed up to my newsletter, will be getting a newsletter with some fun information on what's ahead for me and for you guys, hopefully, in that newsletter. So if you're not signed up, go to the website and you'll find a sign up form for the newsletter. And tomorrow morning, my time, which will probably be this evening for some of you guys, your time, you'll get access to the replay of this class as soon as it finishes processing. So you'll get a couple of emails from me about that. But thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you have the wonderful rest of your day. And if it's evening time, then have a wonderful evening. And I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.